All right. So at this point, guys, you should have finished your decision-making Google form. So you should have answered the first page of that on your own and then got with your partner to complete your list of pros and cons for both sides of either a full-scale invasion or completing dropping the atomic bombs. And so if you finish that and then actually made your decision independently and typed up what your response would be, each person needs to make sure that they completed that and submitted it. And so we're going to talk about what Harry Truman decides to do. And so President Truman was given the options: should we do a full-scale invasion of Japan or should we drop the atomic bombs? And so, as most of you guys know, just from your prior knowledge, we did decide to drop the atomic bombs in Japan. And so we didn't drop just one, we dropped two. And so the research, we kind of talked about this earlier, but the research leading up to that to actually form an atom bomb or an atomic bomb was called the Manhattan Project. And so that's going to go in your first blank. It's not letting me write really well, so I'm just going to type it. So it was called the Manhattan Project. And so basically, this was a highly secretive project that where they did the research and they also kind of figured out what would it take to create an atom bomb. And they do end up testing that. They test it prior to us dropping that atomic bomb, but they don't really see the full scale of what an atomic bomb in the aftermath could be because they don't test it on people. They test it on like a fake town where they, drop the bomb and explodes, but they don't really see the impacts of how that works on people. So that's something that they're really not sure about leading into the decision of dropping the bomb. So that's something they're like, we don't really know the effects. We know there's a lot of radiation. We know that obviously it's a bomb, so it's going to destroy pretty much everything in a certain area. But it has such a more intense impact than just a regular old bomb would be. So if you think about a regular bomb is going to have a small area that it's going to destroy, but an atomic bomb is going to have a much larger area, much more fire involved with that. That will lead to, the towns being completely destroyed. And then also, the deaths of many people as well as long-term effects after, having to rebuild from that. And so, but they decide that the atomic bomb is the way that it needs to be, the war needs to be finished. And so they know that the Japanese will most likely surrender if we drop the atomic bombs. And so the Manhattan Project, which has started years before that, really helps us get to the point where we have a created atomic bomb or bombs that we can drop. And so the first atomic bomb that is dropped, we actually have two. And so it is called Little Boy. And so they actually named the bombs themselves. So the first one is Little Boy. And for both of the atomic bombs, they use the same aircraft. They have to have one that can carry that, and it's called the Enola Gay. And so that is, there's not a picture here, but I'll show you one on the next slide. But the first atomic bomb that is dropped is called Little Boy, and it is dropped over Hiroshima. And so that is a city in Japan. And that is actually dropped, let me get this a little bit smaller. That is dropped on August 6th in 1945. All right. So they don't only drop Little Boy, and they, it destroys Hiroshima. You can see some of this is what, let me see here. This is what it creates, what we call an atomic cloud or a mushroom cloud. We have the Little Boy here. And so this is some of the aftermath you can see in this picture that basically everything is destroyed. It is burnt. There is not much left. We do have a building over here, but major devastation of Hiroshima. There is a second bomb that is dropped on over Nagasaki, and so that is also another city that is in Japan. And that the name of the bomb itself was called Fat Man. And so you can see we have our 2 atomic bombs that were dropped. And so when Fat Man was dropped, it was actually dropped 3 days later on August 9th, 1945. And so within that 3-day span, 2 atomic bombs are dropped, and 2 of the Japanese cities are devastated and practically destroyed. Many, many deaths and casualties due to this. And so the big issue about the atomic bomb is not that, we dropped a bomb that no one had ever dropped before. Other countries were doing their own research on the atomic bombs and actually, how do they create it? What are the impacts of that? But we were the ones that actually pulled the trigger on that. And so the impact of that on Japan, we didn't just, target soldiers. It targeted civilians. So people, regular, normal people in Japan were killed in the process of dropping those atomic bombs. And so there's a lot of controversy on should have we done this, or should have we just did an invasion. But the reasoning of Harry S. Truman is that if we don't drop these bombs, we will be fighting with Japan for years and years to come, and we need something that will end this and have them surrender. And so the atomic bombs absolutely worked as far as getting the goal of a surrender. So on September 2nd, so a little less than a month after the 2 atomic bombs were dropped, Japan announces an unconditional formal surrender to the United States. So that will go in your next blank. So they finally decide to surrender. There's really, after the devastation of the atomic bombs, there's really nothing else that they could do. They realized that, America had pulled out all the stops to make sure that they surrender. And so at this time, not very many other countries could even come up with an atomic bomb, and the Japanese really didn't have anything else to do other than surrender. And so the United States, through the atomic bomb, got them to surrender. And that's how we end World War II. So that was just a little bit of our notes on the atomic bombs, like specifically what were their names, when were they dropped, where were they dropped. But this is going to be an Edpuzzle video that you can watch that goes a little bit more into depth and detail and shows you some visuals on the atomic bombs and some of the impacts that they had, how they were created, how they were dropped. And so this video, it's about 7 minutes long, and you have 13 questions. So you're going to go to your Edpuzzle and log in through your Google, and it will actually show you the assignment, because I've already assigned it to you. So you just click on it and then begin. Make sure that you submit it at the end, and if I'll be checking throughout the day to make sure you've done that, and I'll email you if I see that you haven't answered or completed it. So this will be the next thing that you need to do. And then you'll have one more video from me talking about the impacts, finishing your notes page that we just started on this video.